The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the empty space between star systems. It was bigger than most moons and shaped like a giant wheel spinning slowly in the darkness. Lights covered its surface like jewels, and ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Today was special. Today was the day Earth would join the Galactic Confederation. President Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her quarters, looking out at the alien ships. Some looked like crystals that had grown into ship shapes. Others were smooth and round like eggs. A few seemed to be made of pure light that somehow held together in the cold of space. She had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, learning about the different species that ruled the galaxy. Elena was 53 years old, with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen both war and peace on Earth. She had been chosen to represent humanity because she could speak to anyone and make them feel heard. Even the toughest world leaders on Earth respected her ability to find common ground. Now she would need all of that skill to convince aliens that humans deserved a place among the stars. A soft chime came from her door. "Come in," she said. Ambassador Marcus Webb entered, carrying a tablet full of notes. He was her chief advisor on alien affairs, a thin man who had spent years studying the different species they would meet today. His face looked worried. "Madam." "President, we have a problem," he said. "The Zephyrians are asking for changes to the treaty. They want humans to agree to population limits on our colony worlds." Elena frowned. The Zephyrians were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked like living crystals and could live for thousands of years. "What kind of limits?" "No more than 10 million humans per planet. They say it's for environmental protection, but I think they're worried about how fast we reproduce compared to other species." Elena walked away from the window and sat down at her desk. She had expected something like this. Most of the alien species in the galaxy were old and stable. They had stopped growing long ago. Humans were different. In just a few hundred years, they had gone from living in caves to flying between stars. That made some aliens nervous. "What about the Kethvar?" she asked. The Kethvar were another major power. They were insect-like creatures that shared a group mind across their entire species. They're demanding that humans submit to mental scans before being allowed on their worlds. They say it's a security measure, but Marcus shook his head. "They're afraid of how we think. Our individual minds confuse them." Elena stood up and walked to a mirror on the wall. She straightened her blue dress uniform and checked that her hair was neat. In 1 hour, she would give the most important speech in human history. The future of her species depended on convincing these ancient aliens that humans could be trusted partners. "Any word from the ethereal conclave?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. The ethereal conclave was the oldest and most mysterious group in the galaxy. They were beings of pure energy who had ruled space for millions of years. "They've been silent. That could be good or bad." Elena nodded. She had learned that the ethereals only spoke when they had something important to say. Their silence might mean they approved, or it might mean they were planning something. Meanwhile, in a secure meeting room deep inside Nexus Prime, 3 very different beings sat around a table that adjusted itself to accommodate their unique forms. The first was Kethvar Queen Mother Zakth, whose insect body gleamed with a metallic sheen. Her compound eyes reflected the lights in the room like tiny mirrors. She spoke not with her mouth but by vibrating her wings to create sound. "The humans must not be allowed to join," she buzzed. "Their minds are chaos. They think as individuals, not as a group. They will disrupt the harmony we have built." Across from her sat Crystal Lord Vexhai of the Zephyrians. His body was made of living diamond that caught and scattered light in beautiful patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. "I agree. They reproduce too quickly and spread too fast. In just 50 years since they developed space travel, they have established colonies on 12 worlds. At this rate, they will outnumber all other species combined within a few centuries." The third member of the group was harder to see. Ethereal Prime Nothal existed as a shifting cloud of energy that sometimes took on a roughly humanoid shape. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The humans pose a greater threat than either of you realize. They do not just reproduce and spread. They adapt, they learn. They form emotional bonds with other species in ways we have never seen. If they join the Confederation, they will change everything. Queen Mother Zakth's antennae twitched with agitation. Then what do you propose? The solution is simple, Nothal replied. The human leader must not survive this summit. Without her, their species will be too divided to continue pushing for membership. We can delay them for decades, perhaps centuries. Crystal Lord Vexhi's form flickered with uncertain light. Assassination? That has not been used in galactic politics for millennia. The other species would be horrified. Only if they discover who was responsible, Nothal said smoothly. I have access to weapons that will leave no trace. Quantum disruptors that will make it appear as if the humans simply suffered a medical emergency. No species will be blamed. The humans will grieve and withdraw. Order will be maintained, the you. Three conspirators looked at each other. They represented some of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the galaxy. For millions of years, they had maintained a careful balance of power that kept the galaxy stable and peaceful. The arrival of humanity threatened to upset that balance in ways they could not predict or control. When? Queen Mother Zakth asked. During the signing ceremony, all attention will be on the documents. No one will notice until it is too late. In the main auditorium of Nexus Prime, thousands of beings from across the galaxy were taking their seats. The chamber was enormous, with sections designed for different types of alien biology. Some species needed high-pressure environments, others required different gas mixtures to breathe. The station's advanced life support systems maintained perfect conditions for everyone. Elena walked onto the stage with Ambassador Webb and her small security detail. The crowd fell silent as she approached the podium. She looked out at the sea of alien faces and tried not to feel overwhelmed. There were so many different types of life. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange she could barely understand how they functioned. Distinguished beings of the galaxy, she began, her voice carried by translators to every species present. I stand before you today not as a conqueror or a competitor, but as a representative of humanity seeking friendship and cooperation among the stars. A murmur went through the crowd. Some species had translators that made clicking sounds, others hummed or whistled. Elena continued. I know that many of you have concerns about my species. We are young, we are energetic. We sometimes act before we think, but these traits that seem like weaknesses to you are also our greatest strengths. When we face a problem, we do not give up. When we meet strangers, we try to understand them. When we discover something new, we want to share it with others. In the VIP section, Crystal Lord Vexhi shifted uncomfortably. The humans' words were having an effect on the crowd. Some of the younger species were nodding in agreement. Elena gestured to a large screen that showed images of Earth. My world has known war and peace, hatred and love, destruction and creation. We have made terrible mistakes, but we have learned from them. We offer the galaxy not just our technology or our resources, but our perspective. We see possibilities where others see problems. We find hope where others find despair. The crowd was listening intently now. Even some of the older species seemed interested in what she had to say. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders we have not yet discovered. There are questions we have not yet asked, problems we have not yet solved. Humanity asks for the chance to explore these mysteries alongside, you as equals and as friends. Queen Mother Zakth felt her species' collective consciousness reacting with unease. The humans' words were appealing to something the Kethvar had long suppressed, individual curiosity and desire for change. Elena continued for another 20 minutes, speaking about human history, their values, and their hopes for the future. She talked about cooperation instead of competition, about learning instead of conquering. By the time she finished, even some of the Zephyrian delegation was applauding with the gentle chiming sound their species used to show approval. And so, Elena concluded, I ask you to judge humanity not by our youth or our mistakes, but by our potential. Give us the chance to prove that we can be worthy members of this great galactic community. The applause was thunderous. Species that had never agreed on anything were united in their appreciation of the human leader's words. Elena felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this would work after all. The signing ceremony began immediately after the speech. Representatives from dozens of species came forward to sign the documents that would make Earth an official member of the Galactic Confederation. Elena watched with growing excitement as each alien leader added their signature, seal, or energy pattern to the treaty. Finally, it was her turn. She walked to the ceremonial table where the documents waited. Cameras from across the galaxy focused on this historic moment. Elena picked up a pen, an old-fashioned human writing instrument that she had brought as a symbol of Earth's traditions. As she leaned over to sign, Ethereal Prime Nothal activated the quantum disruptor hidden in the May ceremonial flowers on the table. The weapon was invisible and silent, designed to disrupt the electrical patterns in a human brain. Elena felt a sudden sharp pain in her head. The pen fell from her hand as she stumbled backward. Ambassador Webb caught her as she collapsed, her body convulsing. "Medical emergency," Webb shouted. "We need medical assistance immediately." Chaos erupted in the auditorium. Alien doctors rushed forward, but their equipment was designed for their own species. They could do nothing for human biology. Elena Vasquez, president of Earth and humanity's greatest hope for joining the galactic community, died in Webb's arms as thousands of aliens watched in horror. In the confusion, no one noticed the three conspirators exchanging satisfied glances. Their plan had worked perfectly. There was no evidence of foul play, no trace of the weapon used. To everyone else, it appeared that the human leader had simply suffered a catastrophic medical emergency at the worst possible moment. The treaty remained unsigned. Earth's membership in the Galactic Confederation was postponed indefinitely as the alien delegates filed out of the auditorium in shock and dismay. They had no idea that they had just witnessed the first act of a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. The news reached Earth in 4 hours. Ambassador Webb's message traveled through the quantum communication network that connected all human colonies. His face appeared on screens across the planet, his eyes red from crying, his voice shaking with grief and rage. "President Vasquez is dead," he said. "She collapsed during the signing ceremony. The alien doctors say it was a brain hemorrhage, but I don't believe it. This was too convenient, too perfectly timed. Someone murdered our president." Admiral Sarah Chen was in her office at Luna Station when the message arrived. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and graying black hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had commanded Earth Space Forces for 8 years, building them from a few patrol ships into a real military fleet. She watched Webb's message 3 times before she fully understood what he was saying. Elena Vasquez was dead. The woman who had led humanity to the stars, who had spent years preparing for peaceful contact with alien civilizations, who had dreamed of a future where humans worked alongside other species. She was gone. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for her communication device. She opened a channel to Earth Command, to the Mars Defense Force, to every human military unit in the solar system. "This is Admiral Chen. President Vasquez has been assassinated at Nexus Prime. All units are to report to battle stations immediately. Prepare for emergency protocols." On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. In New York, London, Tokyo, and 100 other cities, people gathered in the streets. Some cried, some shouted in anger, some stood in shocked silence. President Vasquez had been more than just a leader. She had been a symbol of humanity's future among the stars. Within hours, the Earth Council convened an emergency session. The council was made up of representatives from every nation on Earth, plus the human colonies on Mars, Luna, and the outer worlds. They met in a secure bunker beneath Geneva, their faces grim on the video screens. "We need to know exactly what happened," said Director Martinez, the head of Earth Intelligence. "Our people at Nexus Prime are investigating, but the aliens are being cooperative. Too cooperative, if you ask me." "What do you mean?" asked Counselor Thompson from the Mars colony. "They're offering to help with the investigation, providing medical records, sharing security footage. Either they're genuinely innocent, or they're trying to cover their tracks by appearing helpful." Admiral Chen joined the meeting by video link from Luna Station. I've reviewed our fleet status. We have 200 ships ready for immediate deployment. Another 50 are in maintenance but could be operational within a week. Counselor Singh from Luna City looked shocked. Admiral, surely you're not suggesting military action? We don't even know who was responsible. That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Sarah replied coldly. Someone murdered our president during a peace ceremony. They made it look like an accident to humiliate us and show the galaxy that humans are weak. I won't stand for that. But Admiral, protested Counselor Chen from Earth, we're talking about the entire Galactic Confederation. They have thousands of ships, civilizations that have been fighting wars for millions of years. We can't possibly— We can and we will, Sarah interrupted. I don't care if they outnumber us 100 to 1. They killed Elena Vasquez. They killed our hopes for peace. Now they'll see what happens when you back humans into a corner. The debate continued for 6 hours. Some council members wanted to pursue diplomatic solutions. Others called for economic sanctions or political protests. But Sarah's voice grew stronger with each objection. You don't understand, she said finally. This isn't about revenge. This is about survival. They killed Elena because they're afraid of us. They're afraid of what humanity represents: change, growth, new ideas. If we let them get away with this, they'll find other ways to keep us down. They'll limit our colonies, restrict our technology, control our future. The only way to prevent that is to show them that humans are not victims. In the end, the vote was close. 57 in favor of military action, 43 against. Admiral Chen was given emergency authorization to use all available forces to investigate President Vasquez's death and respond as necessary. As the council meeting ended, Sarah was already making plans. She opened a secure channel to her ship. Commanders scattered across the solar system. This is Admiral Chen. Operation Thunderbolt is now active. All ship captains report to Luna Station within 18 hours. We're going to war. The response from her officers surprised even Sarah. Captain Rodriguez of the battleship Determination spoke first. Admiral, my crew is ready. We've been preparing for this day since we first learned there were aliens out there. Captain Park, from the carrier New Horizon, added, Elena Vasquez believed in peace, but she also believed in defending human dignity. We'll honor her memory by showing the galaxy what humans are capable of. One by one, every ship captain pledged their support. Sarah realized that her fleet wasn't just ready for war, they were eager for it. Years of preparing for potential alien threats had created a military culture that was focused, disciplined, and absolutely committed to protecting humanity. But the aliens didn't know that. They thought humans were a peaceful species who would respond to violence with diplomacy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. At Nexus Prime, the investigation into President Vasquez's death was proceeding exactly as the conspirators had planned. Alien medical experts examined her body and confirmed that she had died from a brain hemorrhage. No weapon had been found, no evidence of foul play. The official report would state that the human leader had suffered a tragic medical emergency. Ambassador Webb wasn't convinced, but he had no proof. He spent hours reviewing security footage, interviewing witnesses, demanding more tests. The aliens were polite, but unhelpful. They offered their condolences and suggested that perhaps the stress of the historic moment had been too much for the human leader's fragile biology. 3 days after the assassination, Webb received a message from Admiral Chen. It was short and direct. Bring our president home. The fleet is coming. Webb didn't understand what that meant until he saw the sensor readings. 200 human ships had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. They were moving in perfect formation, their weapons powered up, their shields raised. The aliens at Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. Human ships were different from what they were used to. Where alien vessels were large and heavily armed, human ships were smaller and faster. They used strange technologies that the aliens didn't recognize. Quantum tunneling drives that let them appear and disappear instantly. Gravitational field generators that could tear apart other ships. And AI systems that could adapt to enemy tactics in real time. Crystal Lord Vexhai watched the human fleet approach and felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. They're not supposed to respond like this, he said to his advisors. Young species don't declare war on the entire galaxy. They negotiate, they compromise, they submit. Queen Mother Zaxth was having similar thoughts on her ship in another part of the system. Her collective consciousness was buzzing with confusion and alarm. The humans are acting irrationally, she transmitted to her fellow conspirators. They cannot possibly believe they can win a war against all of us. Ethereal Prime Nothal maintained its composure, but even it was surprised by the human response. Perhaps we underestimated their attachment to individual leaders, it replied. No matter. When they see the futility of their actions, they will withdraw. Admiral Chen's flagship, the battlecruiser Defiance, led the human formation toward Nexus Prime. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at the massive space station that had been the scene of humanity's greatest humiliation. Around her, her officers, worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Admiral, reported Commander Jackson, her tactical officer, we're receiving communications from the station. They're asking us to identify ourselves and state our intentions. Open a channel to all frequencies, Sarah ordered. I want every alien in this system to hear what I have to say. The communication went out across the system, reaching every ship, every station, every listening post within range. Admiral Chen's voice was calm but filled with barely controlled rage. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. 3 days ago, President Elena Vasquez was murdered at this station while attempting to sign a peace treaty. We have come to retrieve her body and to deliver justice to those responsible. A dozen alien voices responded at once, protesting that it had been an accident, that there was no evidence of murder, that the humans were making a mistake. Sarah ignored them all. To whatever cowards are responsible for this assassination, you have made a critical error in judgment. You believed that killing our leader would make humans weak and divided. Instead, you have united us in a way that nothing else could. You wanted to keep us out of your Galactic Confederation? Fine. We'll build our own confederation, and it will be better than yours. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Webb watched in amazement as human shuttles began landing at the station's docks. The aliens didn't try to stop them. They were too shocked by the fleet's presence to organize a response. Elite human Marines trained for zero-gravity combat secured the docking bays with ruthless efficiency. Within an hour, Webb was escorting a recovery team to where President Vasquez's body was being held. The aliens had prepared it for transport, back to Earth, but they clearly hadn't expected the humans to arrive with an armed escort. Sir, one of the Marines said to Webb as they loaded the president's casket onto their shuttle, Admiral Chen wants to see you immediately. Webb was transported to the Defiance, where he found Sarah studying tactical displays of the alien ships in the system. She looked up as he entered her ready room. Marcus, she said, using his first name for the first time in years. I need you to tell me everything you observed, every detail, no matter how small. Webb spent 2 hours describing everything he had seen and heard. Sarah listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on her tablet. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. They killed her, she said finally. I don't know how they did it or who exactly was responsible, but they killed her. The timing was too perfect, the circumstances too convenient. What are you going to do? Webb asked. Sarah turned back to the tactical display. I'm going to give them a choice. They can investigate Elena's death properly and turn over those responsible, or they can deal with the consequences of their actions. And if they refuse? Sarah's smile was cold and dangerous. Then they'll learn why humans became the dominant species on a planet full of predators. We're not the peaceful explorers they think we are, Marcus. We're survivors. And when someone threatens our survival, we don't negotiate. We fight. The next morning, Admiral Chen's ultimatum was broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien civilization received the same message. You have 48 hours to begin a real investigation into President Vasquez's death and identify those responsible. If you fail to do so, humanity will consider itself at war with the Galactic Confederation. You have been warned. Most alien leaders dismissed the threat as impossible bluster from a grief-stricken species, but a few of the more observant ones noticed something troubling in the sensor readings from Nexus Prime. The human ships weren't just floating in space. They were moving in complex patterns, conducting training exercises, preparing for something. And in the deepest parts of space, where no alien sensors could detect them, more human ships were gathering. Not just the official Earth Defense Force, but merchant vessels that had been secretly armed, colony ships converted to carriers, and mining platforms transformed into mobile weapons. Humanity was mobilizing for total war, and they had technologies and tactics that the galaxy had never seen before. The countdown had begun. The 48 hours passed in tense silence. No alien government came forward with new evidence about President Vasquez's death. No one admitted responsibility. The official position of the Galactic Confederation remained that the human leader had died from natural causes during an unfortunate medical emergency. Admiral Chen received the final responses with grim satisfaction. She had hoped they would cooperate, but she had expected this result. The aliens thought they could ignore humanity's demands because humans were too weak to enforce them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she broadcast to her fleet. "The deadline has passed. The aliens have chosen to protect the murderers of President Vasquez. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Galactic Confederation. Operation Thunderbolt is now active. Execute your orders." The human fleet split into smaller groups and disappeared into hyperspace, leaving Nexus Prime behind. The aliens at the station watched in confusion as the ships vanished. Many of them assumed the humans were retreating, acknowledging that they couldn't fight the entire galaxy. They were wrong. The first target was a Kethvar research station orbiting a red giant star. The station was home to 50,000 insect-like aliens and contained some of their most advanced scientific equipment. It was also completely undefended. No species had attacked a civilian research facility in over 1,000 years. Captain Martinez's squadron of 6 ships appeared out of view. Hyperspace without warning. The human vessels moved like dancers, their quantum tunneling drives allowing them to phase in and out of normal space. The Kethvar had never seen anything like it. "Unknown vessels," came the transmission from the station. "You are entering Kethvar space without permission. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." Captain Martinez opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Elena Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. You are harboring those responsible for the assassination of President Elena Vasquez. Evacuate this station immediately." The Kethvar station commander's compound eyes flickered with confusion. "There has been some mistake. This is a scientific research facility. We have no involvement in any assassination." "You have 30 minutes to evacuate," Martinez replied. "After that, we will destroy this station and everything in it." The aliens didn't believe her. In their collective mind, the idea of attacking civilians was unthinkable. War was fought between military forces, not against helpless researchers. They sent out distress calls but made no move to evacuate. Martinez waited exactly 30 minutes. Then she gave the order. The human ships attacked with weapons the Kethvar had never encountered. Quantum torpedoes phased through the stations, shields as if they weren't there. Gravitational disruptors tore huge sections of the structure apart. Most devastating of all were the AI-guided missiles that seemed to learn from each impact, adapting their attack patterns to exploit the station's weaknesses. The research station was destroyed in less than 10 minutes. The Kethvar barely had time to launch their escape pods before their home was reduced to floating debris. Martinez's squadron collected the survivors and left them at a nearby Kethvar colony world with a simple message. "Ask your Queen Mother what she knows about President Vasquez's death." The attack sent shockwaves through the galaxy. No one could understand why humans would target a research station. The Kethvar collective consciousness buzzed with outrage and fear. Queen Mother Zakth found herself facing questions she couldn't answer without revealing her role in the assassination. But the humans were just getting started. Captain Park's carrier group hit a Zephyrian mining operation in the asteroid belt of a distant system. The aliens were extracting rare crystals that powered their technology. It should have been an easy target. Mining ships had minimal weapons and no real defenses. Instead, Park's forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of space combat. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful crystalline, structures that moved with grace and precision. They had energy shields that could absorb tremendous amounts of damage and weapons that fired coherent light beams. But the humans didn't fight like any enemy the Zephyrians had faced before. Instead of forming neat battle lines and exchanging fire at long range, the human ships scattered in all directions. They used the asteroids as cover, appearing from behind rocks to fire quick bursts before vanishing again. The human fighters, or even worse, they were small, fast craft piloted by humans who seemed to have no regard for their own safety. They flew through asteroid fields at impossible speeds, diving between Zephyrian ships and targeting their weak points with surgical precision. Crystal Lord Shendar commanded the mining fleet. He had lived for 3,000 years and fought in dozens of battles. He had never seen anything like these human tactics. They fight like madmen, he told his subordinates. They take risks that should get them killed, but somehow they survive. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian mining fleet was destroyed or scattered. The humans had lost only 3 fighters. Captain Park left a message beacon in the wreckage. Crystal Lord Vexhai knows why we're here. Ask him. Similar attacks struck across the galaxy over the next few days. Human forces hit trade routes, supply depots, communication relays, and research facilities. They avoided major population centers but targeted the infrastructure that kept galactic civilization running. The attacks followed no pattern the aliens could understand. Sometimes the humans struck deep in alien territory. Other times they hit targets near human space. They used different tactics each time, as if they were testing their enemies' responses and learning from each engagement. Most disturbing of all was how the humans treated prisoners. Instead of killing captured aliens or holding them hostage, they simply dropped them off at nearby friendly worlds with messages asking their governments to investigate President Vasquez's death. It was psychological warfare at its most effective. The aliens never knew when or where the humans would strike next. The Galactic Confederation tried to respond, but they discovered that fighting humans was like trying to catch smoke. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck fast and hard, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Their quantum tunneling technology made them nearly impossible to track or intercept. After 2 weeks of hit-and-run attacks, the alien governments finally began to take the human threat seriously. An emergency session of the Galactic Council was called on the ancient ethereal homeworld of Netherose. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Crystal Amphitheater, where galactic law had been debated for millions of years. The mood was tense and fearful. Never before had a single species declared war on the entire Confederation. Crystal Lord Vexhai stood before the assembly, his diamond body flickering with agitated light. "The humans have attacked 17 of our facilities," he reported. "They destroyed a research station, crippled 3 mining operations, and disrupted trade along 6 major routes. Our economic losses are already in the billions of credits." Queen Mother Zakth's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her hive world. "The damage to Kethvar operations has been even worse. These humans fight without honor, attacking civilians and infrastructure instead of military targets. This is not war as civilized species understand it." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The aliens were discovering that humans didn't share their concepts of honorable warfare. Where alien species fought set-piece battles between military forces, humans struck wherever their enemies were weakest. Ethereal Prime Nothial materialized at the center of the chamber, its energy form pulsing with controlled power. "The human response has been unexpected," it admitted. "Their emotional attachment to individual leaders is stronger than our analysis predicted. However, they cannot sustain this level of aggression indefinitely. Their forces are small, their resources limited. We must respond with overwhelming force to crush their rebellion before it spreads." That last point worried many of the assembled aliens. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy that younger species were watching the human attacks with interest. Some were even expressing support for humanity's actions, arguing that the Galactic Confederation had grown corrupt and needed to be challenged. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Confederation would assemble the largest military force in galactic history and use it to destroy human civilization once and for all. It would be a demonstration of power that would discourage any other species from following humanity's example. Crystal Lord Vexhai was chosen to lead the force. Within days, ships began gathering from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians contributed their most advanced crystal warships. The Kethvar sent swarm fleets that moved like clouds of angry insects. The Ethereals provided their ancient dreadnoughts, massive vessels that had been built when the galaxy was young. 50,000 ships in total, representing the combined might of dozens of civilizations. It was enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. The assembled fleet was so large that it created its own gravitational effects, causing nearby asteroids to shift in their orbits. Admiral Chen watched the enemy build up through her network of spy drones and monitoring stations. She had expected something like this, but the sheer scale of the response exceeded even her worst fears. 50,000 ships against her fleet of 200. The odds were impossible, but Sarah Chen had not survived 8 years as humanity's top military commander by accepting impossible odds. She had a plan, and it was either going to save her species or destroy them all. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to her scattered fleet. The aliens have assembled their grand armada. 50,000 ships are moving toward Earth to end human civilization forever. This is exactly what we wanted them to do. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Jackson looked at his admiral with concern. "Ma'am, with respect, how is this? What we wanted?" Sarah smiled, but her expression was cold and calculating, because now all their ships are in one place, following predictable routes, moving as a single massive target. They think they're bringing overwhelming force to crush us. Instead, they're bringing everything we need to win this war. She turned to the tactical display, which showed the alien fleet's projected course to Earth. The enemy will reach the outer solar system in 6 days. When they arrive, they'll find a reception committee waiting for them, but not the one they're expecting. Across human space, secret preparations had been underway since the moment President Vasquez died. Mining ships had been converted into missile platforms. Asteroid bases had been turned into weapons factories. Even civilian transports had been fitted with experimental weapons. Most importantly, human scientists had been working around the clock on a project so secret that only Admiral Chen and a handful of others knew about it. It was based on technology humanity had developed but never tested on a large scale. If it worked, it would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. If it failed, humanity would be extinct within hours. The alien fleet continued its inexorable advance toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that they were flying into a trap that would turn their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The alien armada arrived at the edge of the solar system like a plague of mechanical locusts. 50,000 ships of every conceivable design spread across space in a formation so vast it could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. Crystal vessels that sparkled like diamonds floated alongside insectoid swarm ships and ancient ethereal dreadnoughts that hummed with dark energy. Crystal Lord Vexhai commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Radiance, a ship the size of a small moon that had been carved from a single massive crystal. He stood in his command center, watching sensor displays that showed the human solar system spread out before him. "There," he said to his subordinates, pointing at the blue-green world that was humanity's birthplace. "That insignificant planet has caused all this trouble. When we are finished, it will serve as an example to any other species that might consider challenging the Confederation." Queen Mother Zakhth's hive ship floated near the center of the formation, its hull covered in what looked like insect egg sacs but were actually launch bays for thousands of fighter craft. Her collective consciousness was focused and angry. All 50 billion members of her species united in their desire to crush the humans who had dared to disrupt galactic order. "The humans have gone silent," she reported through the fleet communication network. "No transmissions, no ship movements, No signs of military activity. Perhaps they have realized the futility of resistance. Ethereal Prime Nothal's ancient dreadnought, the Void Whisper, led the advance elements of the fleet. The ship was so old that it predated most of the civilizations in the galaxy, its hull made from materials that no longer existed in the known universe. Nothal itself existed as pure energy, flowing through the ship's systems like living electricity. Do not underestimate them, the ethereal warned. Humans are unpredictable. Their silence may indicate surrender, or it may mean they are planning something desperate. As if in response to Nothal's words, the first human ships appeared. They emerged from behind Jupiter's moons, a pathetic force of barely 200 vessels arranged in a defensive formation near Earth. The contrast with the alien armada was laughable. Crystal Lord Vexhai examined the sensor readings with growing satisfaction. Exactly as expected, the humans are making their last stand at their homeworld. How touching and how futile. What the aliens didn't know was that the human fleet they were detecting consisted mostly of automated decoys and converted civilian ships equipped with powerful transmitters to fool their sensors. The real human military forces were elsewhere, hidden and waiting. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, humanity's most heavily fortified military base. Built inside the moon itself, the station was invisible to enemy sensors and protected by layers of armor and defensive systems. From here, she would coordinate humanity's final gambit. "Report," she ordered. Commander Jackson consulted his displays. "All decoy ships are in position. The alien fleet is moving toward Earth as predicted. Their formation is exactly what our computers modeled." "Excellent. And our real assets?" "Hidden throughout the system and ready for deployment. The enemy has no idea we're here." Sarah nodded. Everything depended on perfect timing. The aliens had to believe they were facing a conventional battle until it was too late to change their tactics. The alien armada accelerated toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Their battle plan was simple: destroy the human fleet, then systematically bombard Earth's major cities until the planet surrendered. It was the same strategy they had used to pacify dozens of rebellious worlds over the millennia. As they closed distance, more details about the human defenses became clear. The 200 ships were arranged in 3 defensive lines between Earth and the approaching aliens. It was a textbook formation for a desperate last stand, exactly what military doctrine suggested for a heavily outnumbered force. "They're not even trying to be creative," Queen Mother Zax observed with contempt. "Their tactical thinking is primitive." The first alien ships opened fire at maximum range. Thousands of energy beams and missile salvos crossed the void toward the human positions. The human ships returned fire with their own weapons, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Within minutes, the first line of human defenders was overwhelmed and destroyed. The aliens pressed their attack, smashing through the second and third defensive lines with ease. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as their reactors overloaded. The few survivors fled toward Earth, apparently in full retreat. "Pathetic," Crystal Lord Vexhai declared. "Their resistance lasted less than an hour. Perhaps we should have brought fewer ships." But Admiral Chen was watching the battle from Luna Station with grim satisfaction. The decoy fleet had performed exactly as planned, convincing the aliens that human military doctrine was conventional and predictable. Now came the real test. "Phase 1 complete," she announced to her hidden forces. "All ships, prepare for Phase 2. Remember, we only get one chance at this." The alien armada continued toward Earth. Their formation now spread across millions of cubic kilometers of space. They were maintaining their distance from each other to avoid collisions, but they were still close enough to provide mutual support. It was the standard approach for a large fleet attacking a defended world. It was also exactly what Admiral Chen had been counting on. "Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Hidden throughout the solar system, human forces that had been invisible to alien sensors suddenly revealed themselves. They emerged from asteroid hiding places, detached from the hulls of disabled ships where they had been masquerading as wreckage, and dropped their stealth systems to appear out of empty space. But these weren't conventional warships. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. Mobile weapons platforms designed for a single devastating attack. The largest of them had been built inside hollowed-out asteroids and accelerated to incredible speeds using gravity catapults hidden throughout the solar system. They looked like giant bullets made of rock and metal, but inside each one was a fusion warhead powerful enough to crack a moon. Smaller platforms launched from concealed positions throughout the system. These were crewed by volunteers who knew they wouldn't survive the mission. Each one carried a single weapon, a quantum disruptor powerful enough to tear a hole in space-time itself. But the most devastating surprise was yet to come. Luna Base to all ships, Admiral Chen broadcast. Target acquired. Commence Operation Moonfall. The moon itself began to move. For months, human engineers had been installing gravity manipulation systems deep beneath Luna's surface. The same technology that powered their ships faster than light drives had been scaled up to move an entire celestial body. It had never been attempted before, and the calculations had pushed human science to its limits. But it worked. Earth's moon broke, free from its orbit, and began accelerating toward the alien fleet. At first, the movement was almost imperceptible. Then it became undeniable. An object with the mass of the moon was moving at increasing speed directly toward the center of the alien formation. Crystal Lord Vex-High stared at his sensors in disbelief. That's impossible. Celestial bodies don't just change orbit. It has to be a sensor malfunction. But Queen Mother Zaxth's collective consciousness was screaming with alarm. Her species' mathematical abilities let them calculate trajectories with perfect accuracy. "It's real," she transmitted in panic. "They're using their moon as a weapon. A kinetic impact at that mass and velocity will destroy everything within 100,000 kilometers." The alien fleet tried to scatter, but they were trapped by their own formation. 50,000 ships spread across space couldn't change direction quickly enough to avoid an object the size of the moon. Those at the edges of the formation might escape, but the core of the armada was doomed. That's when the asteroid weapons arrived. Admiral Chen had timed everything perfectly. As the alien fleet struggled to avoid the approaching moon, the converted asteroids struck their formation from multiple angles. Each impact released the energy of a hydrogen bomb, vaporizing everything within thousands of kilometers. The quantum disruptor platforms followed, their volunteer crews guiding them into the heart of the alien formation before detonating their reality-warping weapons. Space itself seemed to tear apart as the disruptors activated, creating zones where the laws of physics broke down, and any ship caught inside simply ceased to exist. But the coup de grace was still coming. Earth's moon, now traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into the center of the alien armada like the hammer of an angry god. The impact was visible from a dozen star systems away, a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun itself. The explosion didn't just destroy the ships in its immediate vicinity. The gravitational shockwaves tore apart vessels thousands of kilometers away. Debris moving at relativistic speeds punched through the hulls of ships that thought they were safely distant. The very fabric of space-time rippled from the impact, creating zones of distorted gravity that trapped fleeing vessels. When the light faded and the sensors cleared, the greatest armada in galactic history had been reduced to a cloud of expanding debris. Of the 50,000 ships that had entered the solar system, fewer than 3,000 remained intact. Most of those were heavily damaged and fleeing in panic. Crystal Lord Vex-High's flagship had survived, but barely. Half its crystal structure was cracked, and its main weapons were offline. He stared in shock at the tactical display showing the destruction of his fleet. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this?" The answer came in the form of Admiral Chen's voice, broadcast on all frequencies so every surviving alien could hear it. "You wanted to demonstrate the power of the Galactic Confederation," she said. "Instead, you've demonstrated the power of human determination. You killed President Vasquez because you feared what humanity represented. Now you know you were right to be afraid." Queen Mother Zaxth's hive ship was among the survivors, but her collective consciousness was reeling from the loss. Billions of her children had died in the battle, their shared pain echoing through every member of her species. "This is impossible," she transmitted weakly. "A young species cannot defeat the combined might of the galaxy." "We didn't defeat your might," Admiral Chen replied. "We turned it against itself. You brought 50,000 ships to our home system, thinking that overwhelming force would guarantee victory. But you forgot that humans don't fight fair. We fight to win." The surviving alien ships fled the solar system in disorder, their commanders too shocked to organize a coherent retreat. They had witnessed something that their military doctrine said was impossible, a smaller force completely destroying a larger one through superior tactics and technology. But Admiral Chen wasn't finished with them yet. As the alien survivors reached the edge of the solar system, they found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had been waiting in hyperspace. These weren't the decoy vessels that had been destroyed in the first phase of the battle. These were the real human fleet, armed with weapons that had been tested in the most successful battle in military history. "Attention, alien commanders," Admiral Chen broadcast to the fleeing ships. "You are now prisoners of war. Shut down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to resist will be destroyed without mercy." Most of the aliens complied, too demoralized to fight back. But ethereal Prime Nothal, whose ancient dreadnought had somehow survived the lunar impact, tried one last desperate gambit. "Humans," it transmitted, its energy form flickering with rage and fear. "You have won this battle, but you cannot win the war. There are thousands of other species in the galaxy, millions of worlds that will rise against you. You have made enemies of civilizations that ruled the stars before your son was born." Admiral Chen's response was cold and final. "Then they should have thought of that before they murdered President Vasquez. The old galactic order is finished. You killed it the moment you decided that humans weren't worthy of respect. Now you'll live with the consequences of that decision, if we let you live at all." The Battle of Saul was over. In a single engagement lasting less than 6 hours, humanity had destroyed the most powerful military force in galactic history. The news would spread across the galaxy in the coming days, carried by the few alien survivors who were allowed to return home. But Admiral Chen knew that the real war was just beginning. The Galactic Confederation was broken, but the species that made it up still existed. Some would seek revenge. Others would try to appease the victorious humans. A few might even choose to join them. The galaxy would never be the same again, and at the center of it all was a simple truth that President Vasquez had tried to express through diplomacy but was now written in the debris of 50,000 alien warships. Humanity would not be ignored, would not be controlled, and would not be destroyed. They were here to stay. 1 year after the Battle of Saul, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Confederation. The massive chamber on Nexus Prime had been redesigned according to human specifications, less formal, more practical, with seating arrangements that encouraged discussion rather than rigid hierarchy. Representatives from over 300 species filled the hall, but the atmosphere was completely different from the last time Sarah had been here. Where once there had been ancient aliens looking down on younger species with condescending tolerance, now there was genuine equality and mutual respect. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. In the months following humanity's devastating victory, the galaxy had teetered on the edge of complete chaos. Some species had tried to rally their remaining forces for revenge attacks against human colonies. Others had attempted to surrender immediately, hoping to avoid the fate that had befallen the Great Armada. A few had simply collapsed into civil war as their governments lost credibility with their own people. But Admiral Chen had been prepared for all of this. The same strategic thinking that had won the Battle of Saul now guided humanity's approach to rebuilding galactic civilization. The key had been the prisoners. Nearly 3,000 alien ships had been captured during the battle, their crews taken into human custody. Instead of executing them or holding them as hostages, Sarah had done something unprecedented in galactic warfare. She had treated them as guests. The alien prisoners were given comfortable quarters, medical treatment for their injuries, and access to communication systems so they could contact their families. More importantly, they were allowed to observe how human society actually functioned. They saw that humans weren't the savage warmongers their governments had portrayed them as. but a complex species capable of both terrible violence and remarkable compassion. Captain Elena Martinez, who now commanded the human forces at Nexus Prime, entered the assembly hall and approached Sarah's position near the main podium. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the last of the diplomatic delegations has arrived. The ethereal conclave sent a representative, not Nothal but one of their junior members." Sarah nodded. The absence of the three main conspirators had been expected. Crystal Lord Vexhai had died when his flagship finally succumbed to the damage from the lunar impact. Queen Mother Zakath had been deposed by her own people when the truth about President Vasquez's assassination finally came to light. And ethereal, Prime Nothal had simply vanished, its energy form dispersing into the cosmic background radiation rather than face justice for its crimes. "What about the investigation results?" Sarah asked. Martinez handed her a datapad containing the final report. After months of detective work by both human intelligence operatives and alien investigators who wanted to distance themselves from the conspiracy, the truth about Elena Vasquez's death had finally been revealed in complete detail. The three senior leaders had planned the assassination during secret meetings at various locations across the galaxy. They had used Nothal's access to ancient ethereal weapons technology to create the quantum disruptor that killed the president. Most damning of all, they had evidence that the conspiracy extended beyond just those three individuals. Dozens of mid-level officials from various species had known about the plan and done nothing to stop it. But perhaps the most important discovery was the motive. The conspirators hadn't killed President Vasquez because they feared human military power or economic competition. They had killed her because they were terrified of human ideas. Elena's speeches about cooperation, equality, and mutual respect had resonated with younger species across the galaxy. Her vision of a confederation based on merit rather than age, on contribution rather than political power, had threatened to overthrow the ancient hierarchies that kept the oldest species in control. In a twisted way, the conspirators had been right to be afraid. The human victory at Saul had proven that age and tradition didn't guarantee superiority. Species that had been suppressed for millennia were now demanding changes to the galactic order. The old confederation was indeed dying, but something better was taking its place. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Sarah announced, as she took the podium. The assembled representatives fell silent. 1 year ago, President Elena Vasquez came to this station with a dream of peaceful cooperation between humanity and the galactic community. She was murdered for that dream by those who preferred the old ways of hierarchy and control. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many of the aliens present had been complicit in the old system, even if they hadn't directly participated in the assassination. They were still coming to terms with how wrong they had been. "Today, we gather to establish something new," Sarah continued. "Not a restoration of the old confederation, but a truly democratic alliance where every species has a voice regardless of their age or power. The Terran Commonwealth welcomes all who are willing to embrace the principles that Elena Vasquez died for: equality, justice, and mutual respect." The first to respond was Ambassador Takala of the Hegemony, a young species that had been trying to join the old confederation for decades without success. Her reptilian features showed obvious emotion as she stood to speak. "Admiral Chen," she said, "my people have waited 3 centuries for the chance to participate as equals in galactic affairs. The old confederation offered us only subordinate membership with limited rights. What are the terms for joining the Commonwealth?" Sarah smiled. This was the question she had been hoping to hear. "The terms are simple, Ambassador Takala. Any species that commits to peaceful coexistence, democratic governance, and respect for individual rights is welcome as a full member. There are no second-class citizens in the Commonwealth." A Zephyrian delegate raised one of his crystalline appendages. "Admiral, what of reparations for the damage caused during the war? Many of our facilities were destroyed in the human attacks." "The Commonwealth will provide assistance for rebuilding," Sarah replied. "But we will not pay reparations for defending ourselves against an unprovoked assault. If your people want compensation, they should demand it from the estates of Crystal Lord Vexhai and the other conspirators who started this conflict." The Zephyrian delegate seemed satisfied with that answer. The Zephyrian people had been as shocked as anyone to learn of their leader's role in the assassination. They had actually executed several of his subordinates who had helped cover up the crime. An unexpected voice came from the back of the assembly. What of justice for those who were killed at Saul? Sarah turned to see a Cathvar representative, one of the few who had been allowed to attend despite their species' role in the conspiracy. The insect-like being's compound eyes reflected the light as it spoke. 50 billion of my people died when your moon destroyed our fleet, the delegate continued. They were following orders, believing they were defending galactic law and order. Do their lives not matter? The hall fell silent. This was the hardest question Sarah had to face, and she had been expecting it for months. Every life lost in this war matters, she said finally. The Cathvar warriors who died at Saul were brave beings following what they believed were lawful orders. They died because their leaders lied to them about why they were fighting. Their sacrifice should be remembered as a warning about the dangers of blindly following authority. She paused, looking directly at the Cathvar delegate. But let me be clear about something else. Those deaths were not murder. They were the result of warfare that your Queen Mother started when she helped assassinate President Vasquez. If you want to honor the dead, work to ensure that such deceptions never happen again. The Cathvar delegate was silent for a moment, then slowly lowered its head in what might have been acknowledgement or grief. The discussion continued for several hours as species after species formally joined the Commonwealth or committed to working toward membership. The transformation was remarkable. Civilizations that had barely been acknowledged under the old system were now being welcomed as equal partners. During a break in the proceedings, Ambassador Webb approached Sarah. He looked older than he had a year ago, the stress of war and diplomacy having taken its toll, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. Elena would have been proud, he said quietly. This is exactly what she envisioned, a truly inclusive galactic community. I hope so, Sarah replied. But I keep thinking about what might have been different if she had lived. Would we have achieved this without the war? Could diplomacy have worked where force was needed? Marcus considered the question carefully. I've thought about that a lot. The truth is, the old powers would never have accepted real change voluntarily. They had too much invested in maintaining the status quo. Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to create real reform. A shock, Sarah repeated. 50,000 alien ships destroyed, billions of lives lost, entire civilizations traumatized. One hell of a shock. Yes, but look at the result. Marcus gestured toward the assembly hall where aliens who had never spoken to each other before were now working together on joint projects. 300 species cooperating as equals instead of a few dozen maintaining control over everyone else. The galaxy is more united now than it has ever been. Sarah nodded, but part of her still wondered if there could have been another way. The human victory at Saul had been decisive, but it had also been brutal. She had used tactics that many would consider war crimes, targeting civilian infrastructure using weapons of mass destruction, turning a celestial body into a kinetic weapon. History would judge whether those actions had been necessary or excessive. The afternoon session began with reports from the various working groups that had been established over the past year. The Commonwealth wasn't just a political alliance. It was becoming a genuine collaboration between species with different strengths and capabilities. The hegemony's reptilian scientists were working with human engineers to develop new terraforming techniques. The crystalline Zephyrians were sharing their advanced energy technologies in exchange for human quantum computing systems. Even some of the remaining Cathvar colonies were contributing their collective intelligence capabilities to solve complex mathematical problems. Most promising of all were the joint exploration missions that had been launched into previously unknown regions of the galaxy. Mixed crews of humans and aliens were discovering new worlds, new species, and new possibilities for expansion and growth. As the reports concluded, Sarah stood once more at the podium. This time, her message was for the entire galaxy, transmitted through the Commonwealth's communication network to every inhabited world. 1 year ago, The assassination of President Vasquez nearly led to humanity's destruction, she began. Instead, it led to the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. A true democracy of species where merit matters more than age, where cooperation is valued over domination, and where every being has the right to reach for the stars. She paused, looking out at the diverse assembly before her. The Commonwealth is not perfect. We face challenges that will test our commitment to these ideals. There are still species that reject our vision, still governments that prefer the old ways of hierarchy and control. But we have proven that change is possible, that the future belongs to those who embrace it rather than those who fear it. Her voice grew stronger, carrying the conviction that had driven her through the darkest days of the war. Elena Vasquez believed that humanity could make the galaxy a better place. She was right, but not in the way any of us expected. We didn't change the galaxy through peaceful diplomacy. We changed it by refusing to accept injustice, by fighting for our principles when words weren't enough, and by proving that the old order was neither inevitable nor invincible. The assembly erupted in applause, or the various alien equivalents of applause. The sound was cacophonous but unmistakably positive, a celebration of the new order that had emerged from tragedy and war. As Sarah left the podium, she thought about the future. The Commonwealth was still young and fragile. There would be more challenges ahead, more species to convince, more problems to solve. But for the first time since Elena's death, she felt genuinely optimistic about humanity's place in the galaxy. That evening, Sarah stood once again at the observation deck where President Vasquez had looked out at the alien ships 1 year earlier. But now the view was different. Instead of separate fleets representing different species, she saw integrated task forces working together. Human ships flew alongside Zephyrian crystals and hegemony cruisers, their crews learning from each other and building friendships that crossed species lines. A soft chime announced someone's arrival. Sarah turned to see Captain Martinez approaching with a datapad. "Admiral, we've received responses to our latest recruitment message," Martinez reported. 17 more species have requested information about Commonwealth membership. 3 of them are offering to host joint research facilities. Sarah smiled. Elena would have called this progress. "Yes, ma'am. There's something else, though. We've detected unusual energy readings from the Void sector, the region where ethereal Prime Nothal disappeared. Our scientists think it might be trying to reconstitute itself." Sarah's expression grew serious. The war might be over, but some of its architects were still unaccounted for. "Double our patrols in that sector. If Nothal is returning, we need to be ready." As Martinez left to carry out her orders, Sarah turned back to the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, yet to be explored. Somewhere out there were species that humanity hadn't yet encountered, worlds that had never been mapped, challenges that would test the Commonwealth's unity and resolve. But for now, the galaxy was at peace. The old order of rigid hierarchy and artificial scarcity had been replaced by a dynamic alliance that promised opportunity for all. It wasn't the peaceful transition that Elena Vasquez had envisioned, but it was the future she had dreamed of, a galaxy where humans and aliens could work together as equals, reaching for the stars with hope instead of fear. The assassination of Earth's leader had indeed been met with overwhelming force, but in the end that force had created something beautiful, a new galactic order built on the principles Elena had died for, enforced by the determination she had inspired, and guided by the dream of a better tomorrow that no conspiracy could ever truly kill.